this is such a beautiful space that I have been a part of for over, I would say, 2 decades, with my sister Victoria here, who got me involved when I was in the banking business, and I had spent my whole career doing various things, so we've always had a really strong partnership. Victoria's been a community leader in the Vietnamese community as well as the ocean community, so both of us have been in community relations for, I think, 3 or 4 decades. We both came from the Vietnamese boat people era during the Vietnam War. I came out of the Vietnam War, I think, when I was about 7 or 8. So I have quite a, I have vivid memories as a child of everything that took place. So there was a lot of trauma to deal with, a lot of adjustments coming to the United States, as they call them. I think we were the first to be called a boat people. I grew up with many great stories during that refugee transition period. A lot of, one day you just wake up to a beautiful city, thriving, prosperous. It's a cultural center that's rich.
Microphone.
Do we need to?
Yeah, the stream is a little lower.
There is a little microphone.
Yeah.
And then it just,
Oh, because the John has the
yeah.
Okay. Is this on? Testing, testing.
Does it sound like it's on?
Okay. Testing. This one's got full batteries. Testing, testing.
Yeah, here we go.
How does that sound?
Yeah.
We good?
Yeah.
I guess we'll time to get better at this, and probably do some preparation for their sensitivity level. Okay. I don't speak much these days like John wants to, so I will try to adjust myself to using technology in a group setting. I was introducing myself a little bit about my history and my background. I am Vietnamese American. I grew up in a very interesting family. I am still trying to find out how I was adopted from my Chinese Vietnamese family to, and only recently, about 8 years ago, because my son did DNA testing and found my white side of the family. So for many years, working in the field of Asian affairs with the governor's office and in a lot of community capacities, I have been working with Amerasians and other refugee settlement groups, only to find out way later for myself that I was an Amerasian child. Both my Asian parents told me I was theirs. I think that's out of, cultural, pure, good intent. They took good care of me. So I respected that. But certain features when you grow up and when you're around your cousins are very part of my white family.
Dad, no.
Are we okay?
Sorry.
I learned that, when you belong to a rich culture, that you come from a culture that goes back thousands of years, you are given many instructions on how to behave and what to believe. Then when you come to the United States and you get to learn what being Americans are about, and your other school children friends are from mostly Europe, which they have, through their own journeys, have kind of separated culturally, so they don't have a cultural identity as strong as we do. So, for Asian Americans, again, culture is almost everything, and it's something that we observe on top of spirituality. One of the things that the Dharma talk I wanted to give today was try to give some of the scientific aspects and psychological and mental health aspects on how Buddhism has given humanity medicine and the psychology of understanding our true nature, as well as it is the psychology of the arts of healing. So many books and many teachers have labeled the Buddha as a doctor, a physician, a healer. And all the Buddhas, we even have a medicine Buddha, who the medicine Buddha is emphasis is just in healing when one is ill and suffering, deep illness, be it psychological or physical. There are many Buddhas in Buddhism, and so there's just so many that is overwhelming. Just like in Hinduism, there's a lot of deities. They all have different purpose, such as Hindu religion, who have a lot of gods and goddesses, and it's very overwhelming. What I will focus on is the benefits of insight work within ourselves. Buddhism provides a explanation and instructions and some foundational education about answering the question of who am I? And then where am I going? If I want to go anywhere. And if I go someplace and I have an unpleasant experience, what do I do next? Do I go back? There's a lot of turns in the road of life. And so we now wake up in a new modern era every day full of mediocre energies, and they're very extreme. You can find that, if you can't find it just around you a few feet away between friends and family members, you can definitely find it on the news. What I read last night is very horrifying. It is hard to, I think, do these thoughts in these times that we're in, especially since COVID, without referencing something to do with politics, right? So I will try to use some of that as reference and be sensitive as well. But we're in a state where I understand that the president is giving an ultimatum that if certain things don't happen, then there are nuclear options, right? We also know that there is this fanatical belief by several religious viewpoints that wants to imitate storming to be a lot of suffering. It's hard to watch. It's hard for, I think, especially a parent who may have a teenager preparing for military life of service. We're kind of left as elders and adults to have to answer and at least give some guidance. If there's a teenager interested in military life, how do we guide them? Do we provide them more weapons? More human beings to do what it takes to create more conflicts? Or do we take a stand? I think eventually one of us in this room will probably meet one of these teenagers who's going to ask for guidance. I served in the military myself. I did my time. I enjoyed it. Thank goodness I didn't have any conflicts. But I was able to guide my own grandchildren over that. I do have one grandchild serving in the Marines. So I think we need to look at what do we do with our wisdom and how we can help. The Dharma talk today is about mind loop. That we do not have a thinking problem, right? Many of us do go see clinical social workers, and some have to see social workers and therapists and counselors, and even are medicated. Utah is the highest state for medication. So that means that there's a lot more people, a lot more children in Utah where their mind, has these medications going through the mind loop where they're not going to be able to see beyond the clouds of our, cloudy minds. They're not going to be able to figure things out because of these medications. Some do need it if they can control their anger and if they harm others or themselves. That's fine. But from what I've read over the last decade, Utah, there's a culture here. I remember when I was practicing mental health in Provo at a mental health facility for private insurance and cash only. But I saw this phenomenon where parents brought in 6, 7, 10-year-olds for not being obedient, for not being well behaved in church. The tolerance for just normal parenting was so intolerable that they thought the solution was to bring them in and admit them into a program. Utah also had a lot of experiential wilderness programs as well. We try to have all these solutions. And there's been a lot of bad stories of how those things end. Everyone's different. Everyone needs different medicine, different methods. But we do not have a thinking problem. We do have an algorithm problem with our minds. And it's kind of cool that with what's been happening with the advancement of the electronic age and our use that all of a sudden in the last 5 years, the word algorithm is very familiar to everyone. Algorithm is now responsible for your sensory. Knows like what places you like to visit, what challenges you have, because you do ask it questions and see if you should go see a therapist and what kind of therapist and why. So it memorizes everything. Our brain is the same. It takes constant chatter in our mind, whatever that comes to our thought, and it will ruminate around, like mice around that circle, ruminates until it finds a reason to store it in other folders. As you know, in psychology, we have subpersonalities. The word, of course, we know we use as characters. So all of us is a character of some kind, right? When we say she is a character. So what happens is,
You're still having a little problem hearing the.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah.
we're going to pass around a chart to use as a reference. So the mind loop that I'm discussing today, how it works, is that we have the untrained mind, or the mindless mind, or the mind that we use every day until we learn through philosophy or some other system to escape the things that we habitually think about all the time. Sometimes we have little victories and we make good decisions, but most of the time we don't make good decisions. But we still ruminate, and then we still connect ourselves to it. We have ongoing arguments rather than making a decision to agree to disagree and just let the problem set aside. But we'll pick up the phone and we'll continue those arguments with our friends, the people that have different viewpoints. So in the untrained mind, as you can see, you have your triggers, right? And so it goes right down to an automatic thought, and then it triggers emotions. Sometimes some people are so overwhelmed they stay in an emotional state, rage, and the police gets involved, right? Sometimes the emotions don't go further than that, and it can cause problems. Then when we hold these very intense emotions, we feel that we have to make a judgment and rectify it. We have to solve something today because we don't want to continue this emotion. We want a resolution, right? And even Asian culture, it's very common, but I think it comes from the Buddhist teaching that sometimes we teach a lot of, I think, in our Asian community, I've heard it from my grandparents, that sometimes it's best not to, most of the time, is not to take an action. But in the Western world, in this capitalistic world, due to that we have the best arts and music, and we're very colorful, right? We are America is abundantly rich in entertainment, right? Las Vegas, amazing, right? For some people. So again, it goes right through to your emotions, and then down below, okay, it reinforces your patterns, okay? And and then it loops right back up to the automatic, so then you have another thought. Okay? And this is a vicious cycle of psychological looping. Is there anyone who would like to relate to this kind of example? Did you have a thought today that was like that? So you're having good thoughts, right? You're blocking some things. So the mindfulness mind, okay, takes out that automatic system, and it says that I am always choosing. After the triggers, I choose what kinds of quality of thoughts to have. You can start there. Or people who suffer a lot of thoughts, tons of thoughts will go through. They will filter, and some will sadly choose some thoughts to be not worthy of worrying about, but they're stuck there. When their priority probably should be getting the kid to school on time. Instead, someone's arguing with someone on the phone, right? So then, the narrow loop is that on this other side of mindfulness, it goes to mindful awareness. And in that place of mindful awareness, you automatically, very quickly decide if those thoughts you have, okay, you should act upon them, should store them away, okay, or should take action on it. Okay, so, and then it goes to calm response, and then new patterns form. So there's more of you've got more latitude, freedom of having less junk. Like in the untrained mind, you're constantly like a garbage bin. It just piles up over and over. There's no way of disposing probably 50% of thoughts that you want to get rid of forever. It'd be nice to be able to say, these horrible thoughts I have today, I never want to have them again. But when your mind is calm and you practice meditation, when those few thoughts, it could be hundreds, when they come, you're this spiritual warrior, right? You hold this clarity and clear energy, and ability to say no, and you reject it. And there are many ways that we teach how to reject something with loving kindness. The Buddhas had many experience with encountering adversarial sort of forces. Today, as you can see what's happening on the news and around us, even in our community, if you confront the forces, it will confront you back. So the state of calmness and collecting yourself and being very intentional, deliberate, and decide, should you take any action? That's where you have to hold your place. The great Zen master Suzuki has always stayed with me throughout my life when I studied it as a young student of meditation. And he said, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. When he taught that, many Zen students would spend hours meditating on this thought. In Buddhism, it's kind of in the meditation schools, and while you're taught to meditate, a lot of people says, well, you know, what does that mean to learn to meditate? And you're going to find out that there's so many ways to meditate and so many ways to work with your mind that it's very fascinating field. But we would meditate on this, and like many great Indian sages that would write a sentence or a thought, and later on I'm going to introduce you to some of these writers, sage writers, and I kid you not, you could read a sentence like this and spend all day ruminating, and you could get so many different perspectives. So, you know, that's the richness of what the East offers in the history of the planet, when I think the Supreme Creator created the world of wisdom. The East, being the most oldest of civilizations, has gone through everything. When China, that's why China doesn't have a history of invading since modern, I think after 1979, they had a little border skirmish with Vietnam. Didn't last very long. That was the last conflict. But that was not even a very big conflict. Because China considered itself to be a middle kingdom, right? That middle kingdom is self-sufficient. They have everything they need, so there's no need for trade and interacting. Whereas, like, if you're in an island of Japan, you have to get your resources all around you. See? So, but in the spiritual schools, I think of the East, it's very rich with deep spirituality. That when you practice this, a lot of it is you're practicing the inner stuff, the things that it's very different than when you practice Christianity and other religions. It seems like when you go to a Catholic church or a lot of Christian types of churches, there's a lot of celebration of the word. There's a lot of explanation. It tries to explain a lot of things to you. It celebrates the music. It's very active. But the religion and spirituality of the East does have, it's also very colorful. It has its holidays and it has its practice. But most of the time, it is looking for the seat of the soul, which resides in the discipline of silence. And silence seems to be the teacher that we trust the most. Because when we look at who we are, the me, the I, okay, where we make a mistake is when we think I or me is a good master. That's your mistake. The I and the me is a good servant, but not a good master. That's why we turn to the Dharma and the sacred teachings to gain those mastery skills, so that you become the master, the realized, awakened master. You're choosing carefully to crystallize these ancient teachings, and you do spend quite a time verifying how effective they are. Yes, in my family, we have Buddhists, Catholics, Protestants. We have members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You know that's the correct way to say it when you're in Utah. And to understand a lot of these practices. I spent time in them. And you can tell the difference between the East and the West, right? Just like there's so many books on Western and Eastern psychotherapy, thoughts, okay, and practice. So when you consider that in what we're working with in modern technological times right now, we're literally living in an age of algorithm. And it just started just a few years ago. Think of the last time that you didn't really have an app to go on. You would have to just have an email, and you just get emails to read something that they would influence you or try to sell you. Right now, it's instant. I mean, it's happening instantaneously. The more apps you have, the more something grabs your attention. So you've got to look at these, mind looping, and consider that your mind is looping around, going around in circles and circles, going nowhere. So Buddhism, and I like to use the word that we're all considering right now in these modern, turbulent, mediocre times, that we're turning to ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom. I like that phrase because we're honoring many ancient, pure knowledge from all the world religions. And if you study quite a little bit about all of them, you're going to find out they merge. And there's a lot of commonalities. Give you an example. I've been studying a lot of Judaism, and the last few years, because I've spent over my lifetime studying a lot of religious practice, as well as learning meditations from different schools of thought. Like if you practice meditation in the West, be they through the Christian or the Greek Orthodox, which have monastic communities. Protestantism, they don't have monastic communities. They're what we call lay church, right? They're run by lay people. Whereas old churches that have a monastic community, these are men and women who devote their lives to pure spiritual studies. So what you learn is that the East, talking about mind looping, I just kind of looped out of my thought. So one of the richness of Eastern spirituality is that it's going to ask you to consider, to take what you learn and question it. And what a lot of the monks and the monastics do really well is that they practice to know how to measure, how well it's working. You've got to measure your practice to see if you're making any progress. But in the West, people tend to, when they learn something cool, they lose, the mind loop kicks in, and before they get any benefits, they're already going to the next cool speaker or teacher or something that's wrapped in a cool theme, and then they hop the itch, they have an itch and they move over there. They go to those workshops, those yoga retreats, travel across the world, thinking that being at a different place that is spiritual will do it. And this is an issue experience. The West, because of they had such I think they went nuts in the school of philosophy, right? Rome gave us philosophical, the philosophical school of thought. And so they just kept thinking and overthinking, over and analyzing. And as you can see throughout the day and throughout one's life, what the average lifespan is, hopefully now it's 90. We went from about 67, and if you've noticed, another thing I want to ask everybody, have you noticed that time and space is accelerating? I was trying to do some research and inquiry into this. I thought, am I imagining that what is the psychology saying that when we're younger, okay, everything feels faster, okay? But I have this memory of being in 6th grade and 8th grade where there were some classes that I didn't like so much that I looked at that clock and it just never moved. And to where it's like trauma, you can close your eyes and I can take myself back to that class, looking at that clock with Miss Peterson. I mean, it's very vivid, right? So there were times I remember when I was young, the time was also slow. But now it's accelerating, you know. So the science behind it now, they're saying, it is accelerating. That's been verified. And the reason why spiritually we are now suffering so much, when I studied the Hindu system, the astrological Hindu system, it has a really great explanation for what's happening. I started studying it since COVID, so several years now, quite a bit. I spent about 4 hours a day studying the cosmological system of Hindu beliefs. And it is the same system that practices yogic diet, okay? So when you go see a traditional Chinese doctor, that's Chinese Qigong, and they're dealing with energetic healing arts and that. The Vedic system in India, their doctors is looking at prevention before the disease. So their focus is very much really in the holistic realm, that food is energy, so you need to know what kind of energy you want to have. And so there are Ayurvedic physicians that you can see. And it's really amazing. And most of my life in my family, we use traditional Chinese medical doctor. My Chinese medical doctor is white, who went on a Mormon mission and got his medical degree in Taiwan. But he is still much better than the other Chinese doctors I've seen. When he does needle work, I don't blink, I don't know what it is about the Chinese doctors that want to create pain and bleeding, that believes that that's what causes the energy to disperse so that healing can be quicker and promoted. But it is, but when I saw my Ayurvedic physician, it was interesting. He would meditate for about a half hour, and I would have to give him my date of birth. So it's kind of like the system is integral with the spirituality. That he had to meditate, he would meditate through your birthday, would understand your birth alignments, okay? And then tries to meditate to understand where the energy of your soul is today. And so then you would walk into the room, and then he would do the same thing as Chinese medicine, check out your tongue, check out your eyes, check out your ears, And then at the time I had a bloating problem that MDs couldn't solve, and even the Chinese doctor couldn't solve. And so I went back to the Ayurvedic physician. Now, to let you know that most Hollywood stars, that's who they use, these Ayurvedic physicians. They're very good. They're very high cost, cash only kind of people, but in India there's so many of them. They're very inexpensive. So if you're back east, you should use an Ayurvedic physician. But it was kind of interesting, and so he said to me, well, you have parasites, and so I'm going to give you some herbs, and by the way, you used to not like eating tomatoes or cheese, but the last 8 months you've been eating a lot of tomatoes and cheese, and I'm like, how the heck did you know this? And he said, well, because the parasites, they have a habit, okay? And by tapping into the energy pulse, they could even know what the parasite likes to eat. So the parasite wouldn't die inside me with the Chinese treatment because I was still eating to feed the parasite with the cheese and the tomato, which I never liked before. But now I'm just like, all of a sudden, it's like one of those things where, so if you get it, like, if you wake up one day and you start like eating something that you never liked, it's not a good sign. It means that the parasite wants it, not you. Okay? So I learned something about that in the healing realm. And so then I stopped eating tomatoes and cheese, and the medicine worked, and my bloating completely disappeared. So the East, as an example of Eastern healing of the arts, they do work with that. And right now, even a lot of the healers and Chinese physicians, they're diagnosing people beyond clinical diagnosis of flu and common symptoms. They're now starting to, they've been taught also spiritual attacks by energetic parasites. They were taught this in school, and the last 20 years, a lot of these healers told me that they did not, it was very rare to tell a patient that you're not, I can't give you herbs today. I can't do needle work because what's happening to you is not an illness. It is an attachment of a very negative form of energy, and trying to explain that to the clients. So Chinese doctors today all of a sudden is having to diagnose and explain. Mostly when you go into a Chinese clinic, they will diagnose people and talk about violating HIPAA. They will treat 10 people all at once sitting, on their comfortable couches, and they put needles in everybody, and then they walk around and adjust everybody all at the same time. And then everyone in this room, while they're sitting there waiting for the needle to work, which is about 45 minutes to an hour, everyone's telling each other their medical problems. Okay? But it's kind of funny because it's kind of comforting, right? It kills the time while you're sitting there being healed. But culturally, what's appropriate, again, here's the East and West again. They're very different. But right now we're seeing in the Eastern healing arts, that healers are diagnosing spiritual disturbances. And so, and then during the time when I had worked as the Director of Asian Affairs for the state of Utah, so that position, I had a lot of families, for about a few years. I mean, I heard all kinds of problems. And then, my job was a strange period, group of people that just kept coming into my office. And mind you, this was a time when I was working in the nonprofit world as a clinical director. I was supervising about 25 social workers working with refugee trauma victims, okay, on human trafficking and that. And so I then, they would, it was, so these families would come in and they would say, can you tell law enforcement to charge this person with psychic attacks or black magic, for example. That kept coming in all day long. And of course, I'm like, wow, I had to tell them, well, our system can't help you. And by the way, I'm curious, after the 20th family comes in, and it just keeps going. But there was this phenomenon would happen that I saw 7 times until I became a believer. And that was that families would come in and says, it's black magic. I said, why? And they said, well, because our young daughter, which is only in her 20s, is marrying someone that's 60 or older. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. Okay? And so then I would go to these exorcisms. And I was doing this for several years, and I would go to different exorcisms, and I would try to take clinical notes. I'd interview these clients and families, okay? And it drove me into this world of, what now the Catholic Church does, right? You have to get a clinical evaluation before exorcism is authorized. So I was starting to do that myself, but with my own community. And then, when the exorcisms worked, they worked really well, which was fascinating because some of the shamans I worked with would remove some of these spirits within 30 seconds or less, but then on the western side of rites and rituals, I hear from Mexicans and other places, in Philippines, they have that client coming back several months of the same exorcism and just getting some relief before that thing detaches itself. But then on over to the east, it was completely eliminated. So it's really fascinating me. So I've been studying all these things all these years, trying to understand the rich spiritual gift of the East. The reason I wanted to share that is in the Hindu cosmology readings that we are aware now, the time of what we're experiencing today, we knew these things were coming. We actually knew what month, what would happen. There's a group I belong to that sends out these types of predictions. And I'm telling you, the accuracy is 90% and more. We knew this Iran conflict was coming. Then we knew that by summer, this nature is going to join in the chaos. This is a geostorm that is coming onto the planet. And how it's explained is, in the Hindu cosmological calendar, every 20,000 years, Rahu and Ketu, which is the north and south pole, will switch polarity. So the North Pole is our conscious mind, is connected to the moon energy. The South Pole is the subconscious mind. So this is the only time on the calendar. It started 2 years ago. So in a normal calendar, you have all these planets that influence, and all planets have a quality, a certain distinct quality of energy. And if you will Google, you'll find out that there's another phenomenon that has been verified. All the solar system, the planets, have gotten closer to the Earth more than ever. So now we have influence of all these planetary systems completely close to the Earth. So we're working with all these energies at one time. And every other week, they're trading their dominance. So so Ketu and Rahu, which are again North and South Pole, is now completely have taken over the astrological energies, and that is the masculine energy. That's why you've got so much conflict. And so the remedy right now is to try to draw down and bring down feminine energy to create balance, counterbalance. They're asking for prayer and intentions, and a lot of Eastern teachers and masters are asking for us, for each one of you who are inspired, to create a prayer group, even if it's between two people or more. And whatever prayer means to you, but what matters is it's the energy. Right now, you're going to find out soon, within a few days, this change, the rapid change of temperature, okay, we knew 2 months ago from the week that this would happen. And so again, the poles are changing. And for people who don't have strong minds, okay, with these energies that are chaotic, it will influence those psyches. So we're back to, again, if you do not have a strong mind, you are now under these energetic systems. And they're here, they're very strong. The value of learning meditation is to go into a place where you can neutralize these energies and sometimes put up barriers so that they don't come through you and influence you when you wake up. And then there are also ways to work with it, take advantage of it. For some people, you may want if you're weak and you need the extra energy, then harness that and use it. But then you have to understand that it is a destructive energy that is here. So it is so important to learn